I'm Doug Gronau, farm in Crawford County, just outside of Vail, which is about 85 miles straight west of Ames, and farm with my son, and my wife helps out too. And right now we're farming about 1,000 acres, and we've been no-till since 2006, and been using cover crops since 2014. Really, it all started back in the 60s and 70s. My dad knew there was a better way than plowing, and he actually started no-till using a old Buffalo machine. And he had pretty good luck with that. The only trouble was there wasn't any weed control to speak of, and the planter units were very questionable, and he was having a lot of trouble with them. And there was no seed monitors or anything else, so he ended up going to a plateless planter. But one thing I did learn from that, I knew no-till would work. And as things happened, I knew at some point when I changed equipment that that's the way I was going to go. We made that switch in 2006. When I made the decision to go no-till, I really didn't take the advice of a lot of folks that said just do it a little bit at a time. We just decided to go, and all our acres, and we would make it work. And that's how we did it. We started out with a Kinsey planter with kind of a Martin till system on that, and which was basically a coulter, row cleaners, spike packer wheels and drag chains. And as time went along, we ended up with a case planter. And when we actually started using floating row cleaners on that, and we've got a 16 row split row planter, 1631 for soybeans. And it works pretty well. We've got a row cleaner on every row, and they're a very narrow line. And believe it or not, we can go right into standing corn stalks and plant. Our goal was to have a better seed bed than we were using with just the coulters. And that's worked out pretty well. I stuck with no-till for several different reasons. Number one, I knew it would work. I knew it would take a little time to really get the soil stabilized, and which it has. And again, there were equipment savings and labor savings, and eventually I knew it would be a real good soil building and soil saving technique. Some of the tips that I think I've learned, don't necessarily do what I did and go whole hog into no-till right away. You might want to start small. But I think the number one thing is to keep your expectations low, because especially in soybeans, and especially with 15-inch soybeans, the soybeans look terrible until they have actually gotten bigger than the corn stalks. And in 15-inch, you can't even hardly see them until they're 6 or 8 inches high. It's not like 30-inch row beans that kind of crowd each other and grow taller. So if looking down a nice, neat row is really your thing, maybe you should question or change your mindset before you go to no-till, because even though the tops don't necessarily look like they're there, the roots are growing, and that's the most important thing. Corn is very similar in that regard. You just can't hardly see that corn, and you think there's something wrong with it, and you go out there and look at it, and it looks good. But when you're looking at that bean stubble and the corn coming up through it, you really can't hardly see it until the stuff is knee-high almost. So. Again, keep your expectations low from a visual standpoint. Just remember that the roots are growing, and even though the crop may seem to be behind a little bit, it's really not. A lot of folks are up in years, they're fixed in their equipment, but I think as younger folks come along, and you just have to keep bringing out the advantages of no-till. And you know, a lot of the problem too is landlords. They like to see nice crops growing in their fields. And when I first started farming, one gentleman, I said, well, we're no-till. And I said, it's not going to look too pretty to start with. He says, well, that's okay. And after the first 6-inch rain that came in about 2 hours, the neighbor's field had completely washed down to basically the plow pan, big gullies. The county had to come out and dig corn stalks out of a box culvert and all over the highway, and there wasn't a problem in the no-tilled field, just right catty corner across the intersection. And that kind of sold him on no-till. And it's those kind of advantages you really have to point out. And landlords, you know, they want to take care of their land, and really no-till is a good way to do that, to have your tenant practice that. We have done a lot of other conservation practices because we're in relatively hilly territory, slopes up to 12, 13%, you know, and if you want to do a corn bean rotation, you definitely need to have other measures there. And when we started, terraces were the only thing to really put in that we could do. So my farm is actually completely terraced now, and we've just kind of finishing up a little bit, maybe shorter terraces and spots. We still use them. We've done a lot of waterways. I think waterways do help catch a lot of sediment and help increase the water quality from running off. I think the no-till cover crops are also extremely important. No-till, you get a lot of infiltration with no-till that people don't realize. And when some of the neighbors have a lot of runoff, we don't hardly have any runoff because the infiltration of our soil is so good. We have saved a lot of soil. Of course, terraces do that. They catch the soil. Waterways do that. But, you know, when you can save that soil right in place where it's at, over time, your organic matter increases, and we've noticed that. When I first started farming, we were 1.8 to 2.4 organic matter, and now we're between 3 and 4, and that's going primarily with a corn bean rotation. And they say, yeah, you really can't build organic matter with a corn bean rotation. Well, you can if you're using cover crops and no-till. We did change a little bit some of our equipment. In 2012, we got this planter. It's a 1631 planter. We added narrow row cleaners on it. Work very well. They're floating. In corn, they work the best. Corn stalks go into beans. In soybean stubble, they actually, even though they're floating, they actually remove just a little too much soil. We did add starter fertilizer with some tubes that go right down in here, and it's an air down pressure system. And we found in planting corn that the depth control wasn't really the best. There wasn't quite enough down pressure. And we knew what we wanted to do, but it was really impractical to try and update this planter, so we bought another planter. Even though it works quite well for soybeans, and that's why we really didn't want to get rid of it. Last summer, my son and I found this planter. It's a 24 row. We really didn't want a 24 row, but I think it had the equipment on it that we were really looking for, and the price was right. We ended up getting it. It's got row cleaners on it, of course, but the row cleaners are air adjustable, which means that when we're out planting in bean ground, my son can adjust them so that they're just barely hitting the ground rather than kind of plowing a path. And I think that's really better for soil quality and better for stand and everything else. The planter units are just the same pretty much as the other one. It does have starter fertilizer on it, and it's a little bit different because it's in the shoe of the planter, and it actually puts the starter fertilizer underneath the seed instead of on top of the seed. And I think that might be an advantage. It also came with these spiked row furrow closers, and the wheel here is the same. But one thing it does have pressure, automatic pressure, down pressure, automatic hydraulic down pressure, and it keeps your depth the same all over the field. And that has really been a lifesaver this year because it was so dry we went to 2.5 inches, and I've never had corn come up as even and as at the same depth, all emerge the same time, and I think that in itself is going to be very helpful. Also, we've got all electric planting units, which helps with the spacing. So I'm really happy we got this planter. Even though it's fairly large for our area, it really does the job. 3 years ago, my son and I made the decision to hire a professional crop consultant. And I think it's turned out to be a really good investment. Even though there's that cost, you do get the crop scouting part, but you also get really good analysis and suggestions on how to improve what you're doing. One of the things that they do is prescription planning, and by that I mean is a variable rate planning. And really one other person, when I was thinking about signing up for this, encouraged me to do it. And the reason is on the poor ground now, especially in corn, they would reduce the population, and by doing that, the corn was able to, if you plant a flexible eared variety, the corn was able to produce a very good sized ear. And then in those areas that are really high yielding, they would increase the population, and kind of the result was overall increased yields. And it's just amazing in those poor areas to see the yields come up just by reducing that population a couple 3,000. The plant health was better, the standability was better, and again, the yield was good. We do the same thing on soybeans. It's just the reverse in the poorer areas. They're upping the population a little bit, and I think they're right at about 145,000 now in 15-inch rows. In the better areas, they're reducing the population, getting down to about 120,000 seeds per acre. And so far, it's worked very well, and the more yield information you have, the more they can fine-tune what you're doing. We also, several years ago through our co-op, went to variable rate fertilizer, especially with PK, and I think the big money saver on that was on lime, because there's no sense putting lime on places that really doesn't need it. So that's been a real good money saver, and we've continued with that. A lot of the experts always talked about increase in soil quality, and of course we saw the increase in organic matter. But when you go out and I checked, we hadn't had any rain for 3 weeks, went out in a pollinated cornfield, and not in the wheel track, which was a little hard, but right next to the wheel track, took a spade, went right in the ground between the rows, and 2 inches down, there was still pretty decent moisture. And this is after we hadn't had rain for 3 weeks. And I was getting a little concerned, but after I saw that moisture out there, I knew we were in pretty good shape and were able to be able to withstand some of the worst of the drought. And we did manage to catch a couple showers after that, so that made things a lot easier. My neighbor's crops might be ahead of me a little bit in the spring because the soils are a little cooler, I will say that, but just don't get excited. The roots are working, and the crop does catch up. And in the fall, I'm satisfied with the yields I'm getting for the rainfall we've got, and I'm going to keep doing that. One other thing about soil quality, as I dug this little moisture sample, the soil was exactly like they said it would be. It was crumbly. It was just like you see on pictures. And to have clay soil that was really abused when I came here, to have it in that kind of condition, I think that was pleasing to me. We've also done a Haney test, and on some of my rougher ground, and the organic matters, even on that ground, had come up quite a bit.